Welcome in. I'm just so glad to have you joining us today.
Yeah, it is great to be here.
Whether you are, gearing up for a high-stakes meeting, or you're trying to optimize your personal development, or maybe you're just endlessly fascinated by the hidden mechanics of human behavior, you are exactly where you need to be.
Absolutely.
Today's deep dive is hyper-focused and incredibly practical. We are unpacking a source text that is short, undeniably punchy, and honestly, quite provocative.
Very provocative.
It's a guide titled, How to Calm Down Fast When You're Triggered. No fluff, just power.
And there really is no fluff.
No. Our mission for this deep dive is to extract the core framework from this text and hand you a functional toolkit for navigating in an unpredictable world. Specifically, how to do it without constantly bleeding out your own personal power.
It is a remarkably dense piece of writing. The author completely bypasses all the usual clinical jargon we often see wrapped around emotional regulation.
Right, the stuff that sounds nice but doesn't actually help in the moment.
Exactly. It goes straight for the jugular regarding how human reaction actually works. It demands accountability right from the first sentence.
It really does. And it starts with a premise that I guarantee is going to ruffle some feathers right out of the gate.
Oh, without a doubt.
The text opens with this absolute statement. Let's be real, nobody makes you angry. You get angry because of the story you tell yourself about what just happened.
Which is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading that for the first time, it feels almost...
Dismissive.
Exactly, dismissive. I know for a fact that if someone cuts me off in heavy traffic, or, a colleague sends me a wildly passive-aggressive email and CCs my boss, it absolutely feels like they made me angry.
Right.
It feels causal. But this source is demanding a massive shift in perspective, claiming this specific shift is the ultimate shortcut to taking your power back instantly. So why is that?
Well, I completely understand the resistance to that idea. It feels counterintuitive to our lived experience. But objectively, it is the most empowering realization a person can have.
Empowering because you're in control.
Yes. Think about the mechanics of blame. When you say, that person made me angry, you are literally handing over the remote control of your internal emotional state to a stranger on the highway.
Wow.
Or to a frustrating coworker. You are giving them the authority to dictate your biological weather.
Your biological weather, I like that.
And the text draws a very hard boundary here. It argues that the external event itself, the email, the traffic, the offhand comment, is entirely neutral data until your brain interprets it.
Until you assign meaning to it.
Right. The anger isn't generated by the event, it's generated by the story you immediately attach to the event.
I hear that, but I have to push back a little here.
Sure.
In the heat of the moment, when your heart rate is already spiking because someone just insulted your intelligence, trying to sit back and, edit the script, it feels nearly impossible.
It does feel impossible.
So how does the text bridge that gap between knowing theoretically that you're the author of the story and actually intervening before you lose your temper?
That is the exact friction the author addresses next. And it all comes down to the mechanics of timing.
Timing.
Yes.
Yeah.
The text is very clear. You cannot wait until the emotion has hijacked your system. The intervention has to happen at the very first physiological spark.
So not after you've raised your voice.
Definitely not. And not after you've rage-typed a reply. The author uses a great phrase here. Awareness kills escalation.
Awareness kills escalation. That makes a lot of sense. It's the difference between noticing a match has been struck and trying to put out a burning house.
Exactly.
But catching the spark is the hardest part. You really have to train yourself to notice the physical cues, right? The tight chest, the heat in your face, the shallow breathing.
Yes, and use that as an alarm bell to pause.
Just to pause.
Right. Because the simple act of pausing, just creating a 1 or 2 second gap between the stimulus and your response, that interrupts the escalation cascade.
It breaks the circuit.
It does. Once you create that gap, you stop feeding the reaction. Which brings us to how the text visualizes the mind. It uses this brilliant analogy of the mind as a Wi-Fi router.
A Wi-Fi router.
Yeah, it amplifies whatever signal you feed it.
Oh, I love that imagery. If you connect your mental Wi-Fi to a frustrating narrative, it just rapidly downloads more and more frustration until your whole system crashes.
Precisely. The mind is an amplifier. Whatever you focus your attention on expands.
It snowballs.
Yep. If you focus on how disrespected you feel, your brain will happily act as a search engine, pulling up a dozen past examples of why you should be furious right now.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source describes a very specific phenomenon we all engage in, but rarely have a good name for. It calls it building a mental courtroom.
Oh, yes, the mental courtroom. We all do that.
We all do. Let's say we go back to that scenario with Dave from accounting, sending the passive-aggressive email. You read it, the spark happens. But instead of pausing, you take Dave to trial in your head.
You put him right on the witness stand.
You do. You replay the email over and over, you justify your outrage, you imagine the devastating comeback you should have sent, effectively calling character witnesses to the stand in your head to prove to an imaginary judge that you are entirely right and Dave is entirely wrong.
It's exhaustive.
We've all won those imaginary arguments in the shower.
We absolutely have. We all host these elaborate, completely fictional trials in our prefrontal cortex. And what the text is pointing out is how deeply destructive that mental courtroom actually is to your own nervous system.
Because it's keeping the anger alive.
More than that, the author states that your ruminating thoughts are literally gasoline.
Gasoline.
Yes. When you sit there replaying the slight, prosecuting the offender in your mind, you might think you are processing your anger. You aren't.
You're just fueling it.
You are pouring gasoline on a fire. You are actively choosing to keep the biological trigger alive.
You're doing Dave's job for him. You are keeping yourself miserable long after the actual event is over.
Exactly. And the advice the author gives here is blunt. Stop the replay. Court is adjourned.
Court is adjourned. I like that.
Don't pour more fuel on the fire. You have to recognize when you are constructing the courtroom and manually shut it down.
That leads naturally into how we actually manage the mind once we've shut the courtroom down. The text introduces another fantastic analogy here, suggesting we need to treat our triggered mind like a child having a full-blown meltdown.
It is a very compassionate but incredibly firm way to look at ourselves.
It really is. Picture a 3-year-old in the middle of a supermarket. They wanted the sugary cereal, you said no, and now they are face down on the linoleum screaming at the top of their lungs.
We've all seen it.
The text points out the obvious. When a child screams, you don't drop to the floor and scream back at them.
No, that just creates total chaos.
Right. You are the adult. Your job is to calm them down.
Yet look at how we normally handle our own internal state. Usually when we feel ourselves getting wildly angry or anxious, we get angry at ourselves for feeling that way.
Or we panic because we feel like we're losing control.
Exactly. We essentially join the toddler on the floor, we participate in the meltdown. But if you can compartmentalize for a second and picture your triggered racing mind as that screaming child, your role immediately shifts.
You are no longer the tantrum. You're the calming adult observing the tantrum.
And the text doesn't just leave us with a metaphor. It provides the exact actionable steps for how to be that calming adult to our own nervous system.
Which are surprisingly simple.
They are. It instructs you to manually slow your breathing, lower your internal tone, and use a specific grounding mantra.
I choose peace.
Yes.
Yeah.
I choose peace. And the author firmly reassures the reader, yes, it works.
Now, I know slowing your breathing sounds like the most cliche advice in the world, but there's a reason every psychological text comes back to it, right?
There is a profound biological reason. It works because you are utilizing a manual override on an autonomic panic response.
Like hacking your own biology.
Exactly. Think back to the screaming child. A calm, low, steady voice from a parent signals safety to the child's nervous system. By deliberately slowing your breathing and lowering your internal narrative tone and your physical speaking tone if you're actually talking out loud, you are sending explicit biological signals of safety to your own brain.
You're breaking the feedback loop.
You are demanding that your system regulate.
Speaking of chaos, the text takes a really sharp turn here and goes directly after a massive cultural myth. One that keeps so many of us trapped in that dysregulated state. It explicitly states, busy does not equal stressed. Being productive doesn't require being emotionally chaotic.
What's fascinating here is how effectively the author dismantles modern hustle culture in just a couple of sentences.
It's so needed.
It is. We have been deeply conditioned, especially in corporate environments, to believe that if you aren't visibly stressed, you simply aren't working hard enough or you don't care enough.
Oh, absolutely. We treat stress like it's a VIP pass. It's a bizarre badge of honor. You see people practically bragging about how overwhelmed they are.
Running from meeting to meeting frantically.
Acting like their emotional chaos is tangible proof of their importance to the company.
It's performative panic. But the text entirely flips that script. It argues that stress is not a badge of honor. is a sign of a dysregulated system.
A weakness, almost.
In a way, yes. In fact, he argues that calm is true strength. The author makes the observation that the most powerful people in any room are always the ones who don't react emotionally.
That makes total sense. Think about true leadership. When you picture genuine authority, you don't picture someone losing their temper, sending frantic emails, or spinning out of control over a missed deadline.
Not at all.
You picture the person who remains entirely steady when everything else is falling apart. You picture the person who can sit in the middle of a Category 5 hurricane and just breathe. That is real power.
And this source breaks down the mechanics of that power by explaining that we all have two distinct operational modes.
Right, the red mode and the green mode.
Exactly. First, there's the red mode, which the author calls reaction mode. This state is fueled by anger, ego, irritation, and defensiveness.
It's the toddler on the floor?
Yes. Then there is the green mode, which is power mode. This is characterized by calm, clarity, control, and compassion.
The crucial takeaway here isn't just that these two modes exist, but the realization of the moment of choice.
Right.
The text emphasizes that in every single moment, you are choosing which mode you operate from. It's not a fixed personality trait. You aren't permanently wired as a reaction mode person or a power mode person.
It is an active, ongoing selection you make multiple times a day.
Every interaction is a fork in the road. Red or green, reaction or power. But practically speaking, how do you make that switch when the momentum is pulling you toward red?
The text lays down an absolute non-negotiable rule for this. It says, thoughts create emotions, period.
Period.
If you want to change the feeling, you have to change the thought driving it.
It brings us full circle right back to the core premise of the story we tell ourselves.
Exactly. The emotion you feel is just the caboose on the train. The thought is the engine pulling it. If you don't like the destination the train is heading toward, you can't just yell at the caboose. You have to switch the engine.
I really appreciate how the text provides a perfect, grounded application of this. It uses a highly common trigger. Let's say someone does something rude.
Happens every day.
Your immediate default thought is often, they disrespected me. Now, that thought instantly puts you in reaction mode. Your ego flares up, you get defensive, you get angry.
But the author suggests intentionally replacing that thought.
Yes. With, they're having a bad day, I'll stay grounded. Notice that you haven't changed the other person's rude behavior at all. They are still being rude.
You've only changed your internal interpretation of their behavior.
And just by doing that, you instantly shift into power mode. Calm, clarity, compassion.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source hits on a profound biological reality here. It states, your nervous system follows your thinking.
That is so powerful.
It really is. Now, our listeners are pretty well versed in the mechanics of the fight-or-flight response. We all know the role of cortisol and adrenaline. But the critical distinction the author draws here is that your nervous system is essentially eavesdropping on your internal narrative to figure out which chemicals to deploy.
It's taking its marching orders directly from the story you tell, not from the event itself.
Exactly. The nervous system is blind to the outside world. It only knows what your thoughts report back to it.
So it's waiting for your interpretation.
Yes. If your thought is, they disrespected me, this is an attack on my status, your nervous system receives the message, we are under attack. It doesn't know the difference between a physical predator and a social slight.
Right. It just reacts.
It just pumps you full of adrenaline and cortisol to help you fight. But if you deliberately force the thought, they're having a bad day, I'll stay grounded, your nervous system receives the message, there is no threat here, this is not about us.
And it allows you to stay physically relaxed. Which means managing your internal narrative isn't just some fluffy self-help concept. It is the most vital biological maintenance you can do. And that beautifully sets up how the text wraps up its argument. It emphasizes that calm is a skill.
A skill that has to be trained.
It clearly states that nobody wakes up peaceful by accident. Calm is something you actively have to train.
It is a vital reframing of how we view emotional stability. We often look at highly regulated, calm people and assume they were just born lucky.
That they inherited some naturally zen disposition.
Right. But the text argues that calm is a highly cultivated practice. It specifically instructs the reader to rehearse calm responses in their head ahead of time to build what it calls emotional muscle.
Building emotional muscle. Just like you wouldn't expect to walk into a gym and immediately bench press 300 pounds without months of progressive training, you absolutely cannot expect to walk into a highly triggering